There he is. Levi Onwuzurike is back at Detroit Lions training camp. He's been participating. He's been doing it all. And we're going to get to some of the things that he's been doing. But remember, Brad Holmes, first season, takes Levi with his second pick. It was somewhat of a surprise. We knew Panay, right? Panay was a top 10 pick. We took him at 7 or 8 or whatever it was. And then we take Levi, kind of a surprise, but you just set the tone for what Brad Holmes was about, what the Detroit Lions were going to be about. They wanted to be good defensive and offensive lines, and this guy was the best defensive tackle available, and we take him. And remember when we draft him, he talks about how I like blanking people up. I like to get off the line and just put my helmet and my hands on the offensive lineman and blank up an offensive scheme pretty much. I like pushing them back 2 to 3 yards and just making them feel like blank. Remember, he's just like ready to go. Then his rookie year can't really get going. Last year, fully shut down. And we were all kind of assuming he was done. I mean, really, like this guy's probably done. I don't know. This year shows up in shape, looks good, fast, physical, participating. All the other stuff's like gravy. He's participating in everything. This is the biggest news of the Detroit Lions training camp because, again, so far, because we're not in pads yet, he is the biggest story that he's out there. It's a huge, huge position of need. And prior to Detroit, check them out. They said, what has been the biggest surprise in training camp so far? This man, love it. It's an absolute position of need because if you look at our, and I'll get into what prior to Detroit's had to say about this, but if you look at our starting defensive, our depth chart, Aleem McNeil is going to be a great player. He already is a great player. Love him. Isaiah Buggs, if we're honest, is a nice, solid player, but you need somebody else if we're going to really contend like we think we're going to. Am I right there? Like defensive tackle, Aleem McNeil, love it. Isaiah Buggs is a good, solid piece that's going to be a good rotational piece that you're so pumped about. But it'd be nice if you had a stud in there, 2 studs at defensive tackle. Levi is it. Then you got Broderick Martin, Benito Jones, Covington, whoever kind of fills in, plays a rotational piece. That's all perfect. But it all hinges on Levi being in there. So here's what Pride Detroit had to say about it. It said CJ Gardner-Johnson. They talk about also Teddy Bridgewater. Let's just go through it. First of all, they said CJ Gardner-Johnson. The surprise that was not season ending. Totally agree. Whenever you hear non-contact gets carried off, and I mean, it's always a problem. It's always something. It was like, oh, it's nothing. Just a little scare. Okay. Teddy Bridgewater, like bring him in. I get that Sudfeld's been playing pretty well, but let's bring in Bridgewater. Because the odds that Goff might, bang up a finger, a hand, and be out a week or 2 or 3 are pretty. I mean, that could probably happen. 17-game season, the odds that he's just good all season is pretty low. And you hate to do all this work, all this prep, and when Goff's out for a month, we lose every single game. Like, let's get Bridgewater in. He can maybe go 2-2. Let's say Goff misses 4 games. Bridgewater can win 2 of those, and you're fine. And the season's not completely lost. So, yes, bring Bridgewater in. Another surprise was just straight up cutting Badgley. Super surprised because, and we'll get back to Levi, don't worry, but Badgley, I just felt really settled in and settled down our kicking game when it was a mess. And he came in, settled it down, back half of the season, was part of our winning. Why not just keep him around? But they elect to go to Riley Patterson, who is basically the same kicker. I don't know. That was surprising. There must be something up. Badgley might not be doing well, or I don't know. The most surprising part of training camp, though, has been the healthy presence of Levi. He has simply not been able to stay on the field since the Lions drafted him in the 2nd round 2 years ago. Any presence from Levi on this team is just the cherry on top to whatever the Lions already have on the defensive line. I disagree with that a little bit. I mean, it's a cherry on top because we just basically wrote him off. Like he's not on the team anymore. If he can play well, and this is essentially his rookie season, but he's been getting stronger, the whole thing. If he can play well, that changes, I think, a lot because it changes our defense. It changes our defensive line, which changes our defense, which needs to be better because I know our offense is going to be good. I think it's a huge deal. It was a truly shocker to hear that he was heading into training camp healthy. I won't hold my breath for anything in the season. I'll believe things are different when the time is to see it. I agree. When the pads come on, physical, we're colliding a little bit. We'll see. But so far, so good. I would have been less surprised to see Onwuzurike. I got screwed up. Levi. I'm just gonna say Levi. Levi never played down a football again than to see him ready for training camp. Agree. We were done with him, not done with him, but just thought, no, shoot, man, he's got a back injury. He's gone. It's a positive development for a guy who could really use some good luck and a step in the right direction for a team that's still holding out hope for an expensive former draft pick. And for me, that's the key because Brad Holmes, that was Brad Holmes' first pick in my eyes. And what I mean by that is Panay, that was a no-brainer. It's proven to be a no-brainer. We were pumped that he fell to us a little bit. That's a top 10 pick. You can't really mess that one up. But you go in the second round, you take a little bit of a surprise guy. Everyone was kind of saying, though, that he was the best defensive tackle in the draft. The defensive tackles in the draft were a little light that year. But he takes him, and it's like, all right, I like it. We need to be good offensive line, defensive line, interior defensive line. Brad Holmes came from the Aaron Donald, because then he takes what's his name? The next pick, then the other defensive tackle. Like, we're gonna be good defensively, defensive line wise. And so to see him not work out has been disappointing, but it's like he's doing what we did not expect. He's in there, he's fully participating. Usually you see, or I was expect to see, he's out, kind of like what we're seeing with Vaitai. Vaitai's back, but then he's not. And then it's like, well, he's kind of, he sat out this team drill or he sat this out. It's like, that's kind of what I would expect from Levi, but instead he's in, playing, love it, can't believe it. It's a big, big piece. Again, not holding my breath just because, again, the pads aren't on. There's a long way to go. He's not, and nobody is, and that's why you have training camp, in football shape. You got to start hitting and, kind of feel that a little bit for a week or two and then get that going. So we'll see once the pads come on. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Love it if you could subscribe to our channel. Craig and I will be going through all of the training camp. We're going to be all over it. We're going to be at games this year. I mean, it's going to be wild. This is going to be the greatest Detroit Lions season of our lives. Think about that for a second. Because we had it with Barry, but we didn't know it. That's the thing. Like, we didn't realize how good it was. We had Barry, Silverdome, Herman Moore. Life was pretty good. We wanted more, though. This feels like, man, okay, we've been through a lot for the last 20 years, and it's time to win some games. Like, how cool would it be just to be like 8-4 at one point in the season, where it's like in first in the division, 8-4. We haven't just been ahead of, I was gonna say ahead of the chains, but like ahead of the schedule, where it's like in a long time. We had a couple runs there with Stafford, and even those fell apart at the end, and Rodgers won the division. But let's just be like 6-2. Oh, let's go. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and we'll see all of you on the next one.